Lycia of Night Owl Stories, and tonight I'm going to narrate another short story in my new Tales of the Shtetl collection. This one is called The Rabbi's Blessing, and it tells the tale of Herschel, the feather merchant, who credits the Rav of Minsk with his exceptional longevity, perhaps with good reason. So lie back, relax, and enjoy as I take you on a journey into the past. As one of the best-known rascals in Cholinsk, Herschel always seemed to find a way to bound through fields unnoticed, jump over walls and fences, and help himself to treasured vegetables and fruit, or worse, cooling loaves of bread when nobody was watching, and sometimes even when someone was watching. No one ever seemed able to catch him or clearly recognize him when he was up to no good, which was most of the time. The villagers took it up with his parents. In the shtetl, everyone is poor, and everything one owns is precious. Stealing is no small offense. Herschel's father scolded him repeatedly, and once was so exasperated and humiliated that he took a switch to his son's behind. This temporarily dampened Herschel's gusto for the criminal life, but in time he was back at it, and stealthier than ever, denying all accusations and demanding proof. This caused his friend Berein to view him with extreme admiration. "Herschel, your parents must have had a premonition when they named you." Herschel means deer in Yiddish. Herschel blew out his lips in breezy dismissal. "Huh! Had they really known, they would have called me Schlemiel to make me harmless." Schlemiel means incompetent person. "You have by far the better name." Berein means blessed. "I do? I'm not blessed in any way. I can't run as fast as you. I'm a terrible liar. I'm not that smart," Berein lamented. "Look," came the imperious retort, "you're my best friend, and I care about you a great deal, if you must know. That has to count for something." This warmed Berein's heart, for he too cared for Herschel, his hero, and a better brother to him than his siblings had ever been. Herschel and Berein were inseparable, and over time, as happens in close friendships, they rubbed off on each other, acquiring traits of the other. Berein was prudent and much smarter than he gave himself credit for. He had common sense and good instincts, and soon Herschel learned from him to be less brash and more considered. He left petty thievery behind, and on Berein's advice became a goose-down merchant, teaching himself to distinguish between various grades of feathers for mattresses and clothing, and to turn a decent profit in the process. Conversely, Berein learned from Herschel to loosen up and seize the day. He took more risks and got himself a girlfriend, a local beauty by the name of Dvoire, and a job at the banker's commercial branch in the next town over. "Who's the blessed man now?" Herschel would ask with his charming smile. Berein's blessings were short-lived. One Shabbat evening, he came down with what appeared to be the first bad cold of the season. Chicken soup didn't work. And after a week, it looked like nature itself wasn't working. Berein grew sicker and sicker until he was white as a sheet and so feeble he could barely move. A prominent Jewish doctor from Minsk was brought in. The doctor examined Berein at length and asked him strange questions about his stools, his breathing, whether he was getting nosebleeds. Finally, the doctor asked to speak to Berein's parents in confidence and told them their son had leukemia. They both gave him a blank look. These were not educated people, and few in the shtetl would have known what leukemia was. "It is incurable," the doctor said, as gently as he could, "and fatal, unless a miracle occurs. All we can do is keep Berein comfortable and surround him with love." Dvoira was heartbroken. Here she was almost a widow and not even married yet. Any mention of marriage at this juncture would raise Berein's suspicion, and the doctor had cautioned that he must not know he was doomed. "Hope keeps patients alive longer," he explained. When Herschel found out, he was incredulous and declared the doctor to be a quack and everyone else to be too resigned to Berein's fate. "If a miracle is what we need, then a miracle is what must happen." He went to the Rabbi of Cholensk and asked him what it took to perform such a miracle. The rabbi said he was not the man for the task, that instead Herschel must travel to Minsk and seek an audience with the Rav, the Chacham HaChachamim, the wisest of the wise. And so Herschel did, with his usual energy. The Rav received him and heard him out. "You have a brusque manner to you," the Rav said when Herschel was done, "and you're not too concerned with custom, but you brim with sincerity." "Surely I'm flattered, but that's beside the point. What can you do for Berein?" "Nothing. From what you say, the decision on high has been made. He will not be inscribed in this winter's book of the living. You must let him go." "What? Just like that?" The Rav winced. "This is not in my power to change. There is something I can do for you, though." "For me?" "Yes, I can bless you, that you may live the longest life your body will sustain." Herschel was at a loss. He had not come for himself. Something told him to refuse and continue to advocate for his best friend. And some other part of him advised him to pounce on the opportunity. "Before you speak," the Rav added, "consider this. You may outlive everyone you know." Now Herschel was angry. He felt flim-flammed and disappointed. He knelt before the rabbi and said, "If you can't give me what I am asking for, then I'll take whatever you can give." And thus the rabbi blessed Herschel and not Berein. Berein died shortly thereafter. On the day of Berein's passing, Herschel stared at his friend's ravaged body with a fiercely grim look on his face, while the women sobbed and the men worked hard to contain their tears. He asked Dvoira to join him in the corridor. "It might be too soon to talk about this, but you know I don't give a darn about what others think. This I will do. At the appropriate time, I will marry you. We will remember our beloved Herschel fondly, together." Dvoira was shocked, but did not say no. A year later, the pair was married. It was a wonderful and awful time for Jews. They had entered Gentile society at last and shone brightly in whatever field they were given permission to work in: science, the arts, business. After a wave of terrible pogroms, many emigrated, most to the United States. As emigrants will do, they sent money back home, and ghetto and shtetl fortunes improved a little. New businesses formed, plays were written, books were read, music was composed, even movies were made. Yiddish culture was at its most vibrant. At the same time, the black beast of hatred was swelling, fed as it was by anti-Semitic propaganda. And where the powers that be had been content with racial taxes, restrictions, and the occasional pogrom, now there was talk of ridding society of the Jews altogether. Most Jews could not believe that this would come to pass. Herschel said to Dvoira, "I will do what I've always done. I'll run before I get caught, and you're coming with me." Dvoira did not argue. Together they fled across Europe as the Nazi net was closing in on Jews, all the way to Portugal, which was still open despite its fascist regime. Herschel bribed an official into granting him and his wife visas to the United States and safe passage on a steamer. They marveled at New York's skyline as the steamer approached the city. This was an extraordinary place to make a fresh start. Meanwhile, nearly everyone they had left behind ended up in a gas chamber or murdered by the Einsatzgruppe. Herschel continued in the goose down business. He traveled far and wide, made new friends, managed to bring the few surviving members of his family into the United States. He was a modest success, a macha in his own way. Most of all, he was content. One might even say, happy. Sometimes he thought about Berein, and unbidden memories of the shtetl came to haunt him. And certainly, he had no love for the Nazis or the people of Europe. But overall, his mind was untroubled. On his 75th birthday, 10 years into his retirement in Miami Beach, he was still going strong, walking several miles a day at a brisk pace that a much younger man might have found challenging. The same could not be said of Dvoira, who had difficulty sleeping, moving about, and even swallowing. A visit to the doctors brought news of the worst kind. Dvoira was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. Her irreversible decline lasted 2 years and was much worse than Berein's. It took all Herschel's instinctual energy not to descend into utter despair when she passed. For a few months, he could barely speak. Anything beyond rising, eating, and basic hygiene was too onerous. Then he turned a corner, and his simple life of walking, enjoying the weather, and socializing with the other oldsters in shul felt like a blessing. He had grown very close with one of his nieces, Fruma, whom he loved like a daughter. As much as he loved her, he said things in her presence like, "My greatest regret is to never have had children of my own," or, "I hope you're not taking care of me for my money because I don't intend to leave you any." It's unclear why Herschel said such things. Very few of us understand the deeper workings of our souls and hearts. If Fruma was hurt by his petty talk, she never let on. On Herschel's 100th birthday, she organized a memorable party with dozens of guests. It was a lavish and happy affair. Fruma was 80 at the time. 6 years later, she had a stroke and passed instantly, without suffering. Herschel was 106, had no friends, and only distant family. "I don't have enough heart left for it to be broken again," he said to the one dress of Voira's he kept in his closet, and which he fondled from time to time for comfort. "How much longer do you think you will live?" the talking dress asked. Herschel remembered the rabbi's blessing. "The Torah says the body can go on until 120, he said with a shudder. That night, he wished he would lose his mind, like so many of the old folks he had survived. And then there was that bottle of sleeping pills. He could take lots of those all at once. The thought came and went, chased away by that rabid will to live that inhabits the very warp of our being, that desire to go on forever. And who could blame it? Cruel as it is, the world is an endless wonder. Herschel never took more pills than were needed to sleep soundly, nor did he ever lose his marbles, despite his wishful thinking. But his mind did shrink in time to its animal dimensions, those basic things that keep us sniffing around, eating, drinking, soaking in the sunshine, and seeing someone pretty. And because he had become a local celebrity as the oldest man in Miami and possibly the world, the remainders of his heart swelled with childlike pride and finally burst at 119. In Herschel's very last moment, Berein appeared to him, ghostly and subdued, looking no older than the day he had died, and said, "Who's the Blessed One now?" And for the life of him, or rather, what was left of it, Herschel could not understand what the question meant.